Hey everybody, Congressman Mark Green, welcome to Whiteboard Wednesday. Well, you know we can't talk about the border crisis, Biden's border crisis, so why don't we talk about Biden's Middle East crisis? You know, President Biden very quickly after getting in office talked about lifting sanctions on Iran and sort of telegraphing to them, hey, here's $90 billion coming so we can get back in the JCPOA. Of course, that immediately, we know where Tehran sends the money. There's multiple open source documents that prove Iran's sending money to Hamas. So in this crisis, you've got the president telegraphing to Iran, hey, we're going to send some money by lifting sanctions. We know Iran's sending money to Hamas. Hamas fires these rockets at Israeli civilians. Now, keep in mind, in Israel, that means both Arabs and Jews are being harmed by Hamas's rockets. And of course, Israel turns around and bombs Hamas. Now, we know for a fact that Hamas fires rockets from heavily intense civilian areas. So when a nation responds, it sovereignly defends itself to take out that rocket, there are going to be some casualties. And that is tragic, but Hamas has chosen to shoot those rockets from places where civilians are, and very clearly they're intentionally firing their rockets at Israeli civilians. But let's look at what key Democrats in Congress are saying about that. Congresswoman Omar has said that Israel's actions are an act of terrorism. So defending itself from Hamas's rockets, paid for by Iran, is an act of terrorism? Congresswoman Tlaib, Israel is committing human rights violations because there are civilians that are being harmed by that. But who's committing the human rights violation? Is it the people firing rockets from inside civilian areas? Or is it Israel defending itself? I'd submit to you the human rights violation is right here. She also said that Israel is promoting racism with its apartheid system. Now, that makes no sense to me, but it goes along with what Congresswoman Ocasio-Cortez said. Apartheid states aren't democracies, suggesting that Israel is somehow not a democracy and they're an apartheid state. But as I recall, Israel actually has Arabs in its Knesset. So if you're in Israel as an Arab, you can run in their democracy to represent people in the Knesset. So to suggest otherwise is just, well, wrong. Biden is the one who initiated all this by his comments suggesting that they were going to go back in the deal with Iran, freeing up the money, more money for Hamas, indicating that we would do nothing. Weakness. This is Biden's Middle East crisis, and that's Whiteboard Wednesday.